Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Undesired and Prescribed podcast. I am Brown Sugar. Today, I'm jumping into a topic that is, extremely personal for me, something that is very important to me, something I'm very passionate about, and that's the topic of mental health, specifically men's mental health, as I feel in the society we live in today, it's still stigmatized and not talked about as much as it should be. Granted, I would say in the past 2 to 3 years, we're talking about it a lot more. It's becoming much more of a topic. And, I would say that we as men are a little bit more open about and, recognizing that we have issues and that's okay. But that being said, it's still something I feel as if needs to be talked about more. So the whole shebang today is kind of informing you about, where we stand as a society when it comes to men's mental health, and also how I feel the reason why, we don't talk about it as much as we should. And more specifically, I want to open up about stuff that I've dealt with in my past and still even to this day continue to deal with, as I hope that it can provide myself closure on some specific events in my life that have occurred, but hopefully inspire other people that listen to this to perhaps get that help that they've been thinking that they need, or at least further the talk about it, maybe within your own household, friends, whatever the case may be. So I'll just get right into it. I would say that male depression is something that definitely isn't talked about as much, but like I said, it's getting better over the past 2 to 3 years in my opinion, but it often goes unnoticed. We as men, or people who observe men who are dealing with depression, the reason it goes unnoticed because it's easy to mistake that for fatigue, irritability, or a loss of interest without truly knowing what's going on. Male suicide has been on the rise since 2000, and it's the seventh leading cause of death among males. Men are more than 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than women in the United States, and that's a scary thought. We all deal with, both male and females deal with mental health issues, and I'm not saying either one is more important, but we got to start somewhere when it comes to men, because it's definitely not talked about as much as it should. And from my own experience, I know that it's intimidating to talk about. When I think back to the first time that I ever came to somebody saying that, I think I need help, it took a lot out of me. I remember I was in a very bad state at the moment, and this person, my friend, she knew me well enough to know that I wasn't okay and that something was up. And she had picked up on that before, but she never wanted to make me feel like I had to put myself out there. I feel like she did an incredible job of making me feel comfortable and making me be able to do that at my own pace. But that being said, we as men are less likely to seek help for our depression, substance abuse, or any stressful life events than women, because of social norms. We have like a reluctancy to talk about issues, and we just downplay our symptoms. And why that is because I feel most of us fear that we'll be viewed as weak. Growing up, a lot of times it's still that idea of, well, I am the man, I have to be strong, I have to carry the load, shoulder the family, provide, and all that other stuff. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, but still, being born in 1999 and growing up, that is the view that I had on and expectations for when I was to start a family. So that's how I grew up. I had to be strong, and me coming to somebody saying that, hey, I need help because I feel sad, obviously that's going to make me feel like, well, they're going to think I'm weak, or I'd be just too embarrassed to even admit that, hey, I'm dealing with these emotions of feeling sad, and I need help. Uh, a lot of people in life find it hard to open up and say that I need help. And that goes the same for girls dealing with mental health or people who are dealing with some sort of addiction or just in anything in general. It can be very hard for people, especially myself, to come out to others saying that I need help, especially when it comes to mental health, because I was in the mindset of, I feel sad right now, but I'll eventually snap out of it. I'll bounce back and then everything will be okay. But obviously that's not always the case, and it shouldn't be the case of where we feel like it's our problem, we will fix it, because life is fucking stressful. There's so much shit that happens in our life on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that makes it hard sometimes. Hard enough to the point where we can't do it all on our own, where we need that person to hold us up or a group of people to hold us up. But they can't hold us up if they don't know, because we're too afraid to talk about it. Because we grew up thinking, only girls talk about their feelings, that we don't express like emotions of sadness or being upset because it contrasts with being masculine. Boys don't cry. And it's not true at all, because we all get sad. We get these emotions that we don't know how to deal with in a proper way. And for me, at least, as opposed to opening up to other people about it or looking for other solutions, I would look for distractions instead, content with throwing myself or just speaking to men in general, throwing ourselves into our jobs, hobbies, whatever the case may be, school. And that doesn't teach us, it doesn't help us learn solutions to the issues that we deal with, and we just repress them and make them worse, because if we're not thinking about it, then obviously it eventually goes away, which is not true. And in doing so, it feels like we isolate ourselves and shut down more from other people, because whatever had us feeling upset in the first place is now weighing on us even more, because we can't comprehend a healthy solution of why this is happening or how we could go about fixing it. And even if our friends are equipped to be able to shoulder the burden with us, to be that person we lean on for support, it feels like we don't want to put it on them for the same reasons I said earlier. Don't want to appear weak, embarrass ourselves. It's my problem, so I will deal with it. But that's never the case, and it shouldn't be the case. That's the mindset that I had, and I'm well confident that that's the mindset that a lot of guys have to this day exactly. And even in media or television shows, movies, it's still, that stereotype is still being perpetuated of, we are the man, we have to be the ones who are strong. We don't deal, we don't deal with feelings and stuff like that. It's for girls and stuff like that, which is not true at all. We're not Superman. We don't have to shoulder the weight of the world on our own. Anxiety And thoughts of self-doubt is something that resides in every single human being. You know, whether we deal with it on a daily basis, weekly basis, only when it comes to certain things, we still have it. And there's a healthy way for us to deal with it, but not everybody knows how to, because sometimes we aren't able to think of logical solutions because of how bad our anxiety can be. And it can even get to the point where depression sets in and thoughts of suicide come along. And that's never the case. Unfortunately, it does get to the point where, we don't see any other outlet. We don't see no light at the end of the tunnel, despite the fact that there always is. There's always something to look forward to, that there's always better days ahead. But that's not always how we see it. And that's not how a lot of people see it, which is why so many men take their lives. Because they feel as if this is not something for them. Not something for them to burden other people with. Something that needs to be talked about. When in actuality, it's something that obviously needs to be talked about. Because talking about your issues, talking them out, saves lives. Because there's no reason for us to be alone when we deal with this stuff at all. We have friends, we have family, we all have people who love, care, and support us, no matter what the circumstances may be. But I know how hard that is. And my first time thinking that, I might be dealing with some form of anxiety disorder or depression was back in my senior year, which would have been the fall of 2016 through the spring of 2017. And I remember thinking at the start of the year that, this... I don't exactly recall what I was feeling, but it was something that I don't remember ever feeling before. It felt like I just felt very alone. I had friends. Back then, I didn't really have too many people that I would consider myself close to. And I guess that bothered me, which I feel like that would bother anybody. Because although I didn't really have a whole lot of really anything going on in my life at that time, I just remembered feeling very alone that year. But the school year was starting, and I figured this is like going to be my last year in high school, so I'll be fine. I'm about to see my friends every single day, new classes, new school, all this other stuff to focus on. And then school started, everything seemed fine again. I was late to the whole permit and driving game. Just about everybody was, just about all my friends at least was driving at this point, senior year. My bum ass just got my fucking permit in October of that year. But then I also got my first job. So there was a lot of things to look forward to that year, quite a bit of highs. But it seemed like for every high that I experienced, there was another low, I would say. And the more the year progressed, it seemed like better the things got, I would say. I eventually lost my virginity that year. And then I had my first real kiss. Imagine that, by the way, losing your virginity before having your first real kiss. And when I say first real kiss, it was like the last time that I had like a kiss was like all the way back in like fucking preschool. And it was like on the fucking cheek. So that's not a real fucking kiss. Full disclaimer there, but yeah. And I had my first real relationship. Um, but then I would say throughout that summer, it felt like things kept changing and I wasn't mentally prepared for them. You know, friends that I had seen every single day in school, or if school wasn't in session, that I would hang out with at least on a weekly basis, if not more than that. Um, I had a hard time coming to terms with the people that, although I felt like I wasn't all that close with them enough to like get like super deep with them about things. They were my distraction from that, and I couldn't fathom the fact that I was going to be losing them here in a matter of weeks. And eventually it got to the point where they did leave, and I was truly alone, it felt like. And I didn't know what to do because for the first time in my life, it felt like I didn't have that distraction to make me feel like I wasn't alone, to make me feel like I didn't have people to lean on, to make me feel like I wasn't so alone. And without that distraction there, I shut down. I would throw myself into working. I worked ridiculous hours because I would hate being at my house. I would just hate being there by myself, not having anything to do ever. And if I was working, at least I was making money. And it was so physically draining, obviously, but it was also emotionally draining too. When I was young, I thought that I used to be very big into the WWE, and there's a wrestler called CM Punk, and he was straight edge, so he wouldn't do drugs, he wouldn't drink, and I thought that was really cool. So I always told myself, and for all throughout my fucking senior year, I thought I was straight edge because I hadn't drank anything, I hadn't done any sort of drugs or anything like that. And I drink on a weekly basis now, but I just want the record to show I've never smoked weed. I have never done any sort of psychedelics or anything like that. Not saying that's like a flex or anything, but when you take one fucking look at me, people usually assume that I constantly smoke fucking pot. And then when I tell them I've never smoked pot, they look at me like and say, "Stop fucking capping." But I just wanted to throw that out there, a little interesting factoid. But anyways, I started drinking, and I started drinking a lot to the point where obviously like I was inebriated, I would black out, I didn't remember like much of like anything of when I was home alone. I would take whatever I could from my mom's. Well, I took whatever I felt like my mom wouldn't notice was gone, and I thought for the most part it seemed to work out because I was never questioned about missing alcohol or anything like that. And then I would also drink before work too because I couldn't I didn't like the fact that, there was this time before there's like enough time in the day to where I would wake up and I was like I don't and I wouldn't get out of bed, I wouldn't do anything. And I was like, well, fuck, I might as well drink a little. I would make sure that I wouldn't get too fucked up to the point where it couldn't work because I know that would just cause further problems. But I was in a very bad routine, and it started leading to me having constant panic attacks that would increase to the point where I had them on a weekly basis. And it started getting to the point where I was having genuine thoughts of suicide. Um, I said earlier that it took a lot for me to muster up the strength to come out to one of my friends. And I remember I, I literally just went to Speedway to get gas. It wasn't anything crazy. Nothing intense had happened. But on my way over to the gas station, I just started bawling my fucking eyes out. I couldn't remember why for the life of me. And I remember I was talking to my friend Nolan, and she fucking knew something was up, man. And I couldn't hide it any longer. I felt that probably was a point where I thought that I needed to say something to somebody that I felt like I trusted enough to where I felt like I wasn't going to be judged and made fun of, which is silly to think about now, especially considering of how close of friends we still are. But I wasn't in a good place, and she helped me out tremendously by letting me know that I wasn't weak. It's okay that I need help and all this other stuff. And she was a tremendous confidant for me, especially during such a troubling time. And then, she helped me out. Her mom is a therapist, and I went to sessions with her, and I would do them on a monthly basis. And I felt like they were helping, but they still weren't exactly hitting the point of me feeling like, I'm still alone. Being able to open up to her was helpful and did so much for me, especially back then, but it wasn't feeling like I was getting any better. And I think the turning point, or not my turning point, my breaking point was to the point where I don't remember this night really at all. I remember breaking down again in my room all alone, drinking and all this other stuff. And I remember it was like 2 a.m, and my mom opened my door and called down to me, because I live in the basement, and said to me, "Jared, the police are here for you." And I remember thinking, what the fuck did I do? I'm fucking about to have another fucking panic attack. But at the point that where she came to me and said that, I was starting to sober up a little bit. And I think I was actually like in the middle of a Rainbow Six Siege game with my friends on PlayStation. So yeah, I was sobering up a little bit, and I remember thinking, what the fuck did I do? And I will go up there, and these officers were very nice, and I texted my friend Nicole saying that, I've come to terms with the fact, if I died, I feel like I've accomplished enough in my life, or accepting the fact that I'm going to kill myself. I don't remember exactly. And that was the most awkward situation I think I've ever been in with my mom, because she knew nothing about it, and having police come at 2 in the fucking morning, like on I think it was like a Wednesday or Thursday night. It was in the middle of the fucking week, so she had work the next morning, and the police are here at my door doing a welfare check on me. And I remember acting my heart out, because because when a welfare check is called into place, they're supposed to take you to like holding, not, I don't know if it's a holding cell, but some place, like a place where they can keep an eye on you for an X amount of time. And I remember saying like, I've been drinking a little bit, like I'm okay or something like that. But I remember you're like, well, you seem fine, so we'll just let it go. But I just want to let you know, if we get another call from, your friend Nicole again, saying that you said something like this, then we're going to take you for real. I'm like, okay. And then I remember just staying up, talking to my mom for like another hour or so about everything I'd been feeling, everything I'd been going through the past couple months, and I remember not even opening up to her like too much. I just gave her like the barest of bones possible when it came to my situation back then. And I remember feeling so disappointed with myself that it got to the point where I couldn't remember what the fuck I had said to my friend that would scare her to the point where she had to call the police, that she didn't feel safe enough with me being by myself because she was all the way down in Bloomington. She was going to IU, so she couldn't come over and make sure I was okay. So I think me getting to the point of saying, me realizing that that my friends don't trust me and my mom has to like be careful of me, harming myself, it really scared me. I didn't want other people to worry about me. I didn't want them to feel like they couldn't trust me. So I think at that point, I started to open my mind up more to the fact of me, like, I wouldn't even know how to say it, of opening my mind more to the thought of therapy, because I know when I was first going there, I wouldn't say I was against it, but I definitely was I was very reluctant. I was definitely very reluctant to talk, open up, or anything like that, because I thought it was kind of sus. I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I don't think this is really working all that much too well. I don't think it is. Like, I was kind of those people that thought that therapy is a sham, like, why am I going to pay you all this money to like just listen to me talk about my problems? And I can say that, yeah, therapy isn't for everybody, but it's definitely not a sham. It helped me out in more ways than I could ever realize. It helped me deal with anxiety. Um, helped me, instead of looking for distractions, it would help me realize that I need to start creating solutions to my problems, and realize that my problems are not as big as they come up in my mind. And that was all in the fall of 2017. And then, once I started being a little bit more open with people, and it was never into this great of length either. I still wasn't. I still didn't feel close enough to tell people about this part of my life or anything like that, or even want to talk about mental health. I just figured, like, I've overcome this. I've conquered this. I'm proud of myself, but maybe it's just best if I move on. And for a time, yeah, it was okay. I remember 2018 was a pretty good year for me. Nothing really bad happened, I would say. Meant like from like when it came to like my mental health, 2018 was okay. Um, but then I would say fast forward to the spring of 2019. I didn't start school. I took a semester off, so I didn't start school until winter of 2018. I enjoyed my first semester and my second semester at school, but then that third semester, I remember getting towards the tail end of it and just really feeling like I don't want to do this, and I felt real burnt out just on everything in life, and tired of being stuck in my ways. But in doing so, it felt like I started to fall back into some of those self-destructive habits I had. When I was feeling lonely, um, instead of doing what I'd been doing for the past almost 2 years to that point, I would indulge them instead, and I would continue to feel. It was starting to feel like, like it's starting to come to the point where it's like I don't like where this is going. It's starting to feel like 2017 me again, and I did probably the worst thing I could have done, and instead of looking to deal with my issues, I found distractions, and I did that in the worst way possible by jumping into a relationship that was not only bad for me, but bad for the other person too, just because I was using them as a means to an end. Not so much to get sex, because we never had sex, but it was the means of wanting to feel loved, appreciated, and needed by somebody else, despite the fact that they weren't for me and I wasn't for them. And when people always ask me, like why did I go into that relationship if if it wasn't meant and we weren't a compatible match, I always tell them, the loneliness outweighed the horniness, which honestly is true, because that feeling of being alone never really went away in that time. I would just say it was kind of repressed on the back burner, and made me real, and kind of just like, it's like, yeah, I might feel like alone and stuff like that, but I have my friends and stuff like that. But I guess it got to the point where I was tired of being alone and wanted and felt like I needed a relationship or something like that, which I've haven't really been that type of person to have that desire or strong need to be in a relationship, because I want to be with the right person and want to make sure it's the right time for both of us. That's always been my mindset. But for some reason, it got so bad. It was like I just want to feel loved and appreciated, because I don't know. But eventually, I ended the relationship and felt fine for a time. But so for the rest after, because it was getting to the point at the end of this relationship, which is this is a story for another time. It was wearing on me in a bad way. My mental health was steadily declining again, I would say, because of being in a relationship where I shouldn't be in. And it took a lot for me to realize it. It took a lot for me to take action in the relationship. It was bad, I would say. But yeah, once I did that, it was in the fairly early stages of November. For the rest of the year, everything felt fine. But I don't think, again, I think I was using the means of a distraction to make me feel like, I would distract myself with like one of my friends, and I would just use that as me feeling loved and appreciated, despite the fact that I still wasn't getting that actual supplement. It was like, it was not a supplement, but just like the actual feeling of it. And I just still felt incredibly alone and didn't know what to do. So now we're in 2020, and I'm starting to slowly fall back into those self-destructive ways even further after the distraction of my relationship ended. And me realizing of how bad that was for me, mentally. And it was rough because, as I said, I fell back into that hole that I was starting to dig for myself earlier in 2019, and I don't even know what exactly triggered it back in 2019, but I just remember like being burnt out on everything, and people get burnt out from time to time, and I understand that, but I felt like I did like the worst possible things in that situation, jumping into that relationship. I don't even think I finished that semester of school. I think I just dropped all my classes because I felt like I can't do this, and I didn't want to do it, and I just lost motivation in any and everything I did. And then the relationship, and I think afterwards that emotional toll started to wear on me, and I created this dependency on one of my best friends who I didn't exactly know what to do with all this. Sorry. I created this dependency on my best friend, and essentially had another distraction in my way. This one felt a lot more genuine, and I still believe it is, but it still at the same time was me avoiding my issues and not getting the proper help, closure that I needed. And it was bad because they eventually, it felt like we started to grow apart a little bit, and it didn't feel good to me because, like I said, I created a dependency on this person to essentially be my anchor for any and everything in my life, and then if you feel that connection between the two of you, it's still there, but it's slowly starting to fade, and I didn't know how to take that because I I didn't know what to do. And after that, obviously, I felt extremely alone yet again, a common reoccurrence in my life. And I started to drink again, only much fucking worse than before. Way more blackouts. I was a lot more open about how fucking sad I was. And I would black out so much more. Being. I remember I started streaming and I remember getting fucking shit faced on stream because I came home after work one night, decided I wanted to stream, and said I don't feel like eating because I just don't feel like doing anything. But I felt like drinking and streaming, and I did. And I remember how concerned so many people were because of shit that I was saying. Like, it was funny at first from the clips that I've seen, but it quickly fell into shit that nobody should have ever seen, especially on one of my streams. And I just kept having more and more panic attacks and didn't just started like hating like everything I did in life because it got so bad to where the distractions that I would use initially I didn't want to do anymore. I didn't want to play video games. I got to the point where I really enjoyed work and loved the people that I worked with, but I would mute my mic on my Xbox parties and cry for whatever fucking reason, no matter how small, how petty, and I didn't, and I don't know why I did, but I just did, and then I would just sit there and listen to all of them having a good time, and then I would eventually, when I felt good enough to rejoin, I would just reassert myself and be all like, oh, hey, I'm back, pretend like nothing happened. And I remember being at work one night and I was literally mid conversation with one of my workers who is also one of my good friends, and just all of a sudden having to break down, and then I just walked out of that conversation into the bathroom. So that my distractions at that time weren't working for me. The thoughts of being alone once again and just ran rampant throughout my mind, and no matter what I did to try to distract me, it would hurt, and I hated it. So I thought maybe if I started writing in a journal, it would make me feel better. That way it felt like I had somebody to talk to, and I did do that for a while, and it did make me feel better, but ultimately it kept making me feel worse and worse because it made me realize that I didn't feel close enough or safe enough with anybody in my life to, at least at that point anymore, to have these conversations with, to talk to people about saying, I feel upset, I feel alone, I feel scared, and I just didn't want to go through that again. I didn't want to have to deal with the fact that I was alone. And all this other stuff that I felt back in 2017. I didn't want to have to experience that again. because I promise you, if you haven't gone through, if you haven't been through anything like this before in your life, I mean, it's fucking horrible and it fucking sucks. And having been through it once before, I didn't want to go through it again. I didn't want to feel alone. I didn't want to feel like shit. I didn't want to feel like I didn't have anything or anyone to depend on again. It would make me feel so upset because this book, this journal was literally littered with so many thoughts and fantasies of me being happy because I wanted to get better. I had that willingness to be better and I tried to think about reasonable solutions and I did. I always fucking did, but for some reason I could never get over them because they would just go right back to me feeling like shit for whatever reason. I was thinking of logical explanations for why things happen. I was thinking of why and it was just bad. And I can't even explain why because I don't understand why I would think this way. I would think of solutions to my problems and they would get better, but they didn't stay better. They didn't stay solved, even though I knew in my mind that it doesn't make sense for me to feel this way. And it was just getting bad and bad and then worse, bad, worse, all this other shit. And the thoughts of suicide just came back. When back in 2017, when I had that welfare check on me, I honestly can't think of an example of how close I was to ever taking my life or how many thoughts or genuine thoughts I had of committing suicide. But I remember some months ago, literally back in the spring, early summer, I had so many genuine thoughts of how I was going to kill myself and why. And I thought of all these ways of how I could do it. And it was so scary. I have that journal still. I don't really write in it from time. I don't really write in it at all, I mean, because of all the kind of bad memories I kind of associate with it. I hold on to it. That way I can look back on it and be proud of where I've come from and where I am now. But April 11th, 2020 at 3:36 a.m., I made sure to always write the date and the time I was writing it. That way, when I went back and looked, I could see, because obviously, like at night, I'm like a little bit more sad than how I normally was throughout the day. So, April 11th, 2020, 3:36 a.m. And I usually have these long, lengthy entries, and this one I just wrote, I can't stop thinking about suicide, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. I couldn't get it out of my head. I would dream about it. And I remember this one particular dream. I was in a bathtub and I slit both my wrists and I remember the blood coming down. But the reason that dream stuck so much out to me is because I remember how much I loved that feeling, how much I liked that feeling of dying, because I felt in that dream, I felt like my body was being, my life just being like slowly like drained from my body and I was dying. And I hated how much I really liked that feeling, especially when I just woke up. The disappointment that I felt when I actually was still alive scared the living shit out of me, and it still does, even just talking about now. And it just kept getting worse and worse. I couldn't properly enjoy being around my friends. And I remember that one of my best friends thought that I hated him for, I don't know exactly why, but I would assume of how different I had been acting because I definitely wasn't, I hadn't been myself for in such a long time. And I remember I was I was on my way to their grandma's house, and I had a panic attack. I started bawling my eyes out, and I just wanted someone to comfort me, and I wanted to be held. I wanted to just, I don't even know. What exactly what I was thinking that during that. I typically don't really remember my panic attacks. I just kind of remember the aftermath from most of them. And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to see my friends. This would be the perfect opportunity to get my head off this, to feel like I'm feeling loved and appreciated. But I couldn't enjoy that because I don't know. It felt like I wasn't a good friend to them, and I hadn't been. So I shouldn't enjoy my time being here, and I didn't. I didn't have a good time that night, and I usually have good times with my friends. Oh, I always have good times with my friends, but this time I didn't because I couldn't get over the fact of how bad of a friend that I had been to them, and I didn't know what the fuck I could do to make up for it. And I felt like I was about to lose another aspect of my life. But for some reason, the morning after that, I was really fearing for my life and safety, and fearing losing them and like another big aspect of my life, because it felt like I had lost so much already to that point, where I came forward because I know one of my friends, he had the he deals with his own, so I know that he knew what he could help me, but I figured that I wanted to at least come forward to like all my friends to provide some sort of explanation, because I really was fearing for my life back then. And I tell you, like, I I could never imagine being put in a position like that again, where I am fearing for my life because of how scary it was. But I came forward to them, and I was seeking help, and it took so much because I didn't want to say anything at all, but I was just too afraid at that point, and I wanted anything that I had experienced. I just wanted it to stop. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to feel like me again. And they helped me. They lifted me up. They were people that I could lean on, people that I could talk to, and it changed my life. Realizing that I don't need to have a dependency on one person to shoulder everything in my life, that my friends are tremendous people. I can talk to them about any issues that I'm feeling or anything of that sort. And it was truly, it felt so good to have that at least off my chest, acknowledging the fact that I need help, and I need help getting that help. So from that point, they helped guided me on a path down to feeling like myself again, recovering from probably what was mild alcoholism, and becoming a better version of me, somebody that I'm much more proud of today than I was 6 or 7 months ago. And I'm just so thankful for them being there for me and help shouldering what was an immense load off my back, and just carrying me to a point of being a lot more stable, being a lot more happy, a lot more confident, stronger, as I said, and overall just living my best life possible. And there's so many other people too that since when I first like came out to them, it gave me courage and inspired me to go out to some of my other friends that I felt close enough to let them know that, hey, this is going on in my life, and I just want you to be aware of that because I trust you, I love you, and I want you to just know that I'm not 100% and I'm not okay right now, but I want you to know that I'm going to get to that point, and I just want you to be there with me on that when I'm going through those steps. So, and eventually I did. I started medication and it's really worked out for me, and I feel a lot more confident in talking about myself and my issues to not so much to anybody that would listen, but to people that, you know, that I trust enough. And now here I am about, it's October, so four-ish months later, and I'm talking to it now to anybody that's willing to listen to this. And I feel so happy and so proud of myself because of how far I've come in such a short time, and I'm so excited to see where I can go and what I can accomplish now that I'm in this position of a better state of mind. I'm a lot more confident, and having this off my chest is one fucking incredible thing. I won't fucking lie to you. When I came forward about some of this to some people, you know, it felt good. I've never really went 100. I've never went this in depth in just one sitting because I never wanted to put all that onto one person or however many people were listening. But now I'm happy about it. This isn't a piece of me seeking sympathy or wanting you to just know about me, just like know like what I've been through and stuff like that. It's me wanting to put my story out there in hopes that if you're listening, it inspires you, or maybe it can inspire somebody else to talk, because talking is so fucking important, and opening up to people that you trust or seeking the help that you need, because sometimes it's deeper than what we could ever imagine, and we need that help. We need that extra support, and that's okay. It's okay to need that extra support. It's okay to have somebody pick you up when you're down and carry you to a point where you can help yourself up and go the rest of the way. But just knowing that you're not alone in this is something that we all need in life. And talking about this all has been something I've wanted to do, but never really knew how to like do it, or if anybody would ever really care. But about a week ago, I was hanging out with one of my good friends, and I remember I opened up to her about something that had been going on recently in my life, and I remember tearing up about it and not feeling the best. But she told me probably one of the nicest things, if not the nicest thing that somebody has ever said to me, and they told me that I'm proud of you for not killing yourself, because there was a good amount of times a couple months ago where I was very close to doing it, where I had the means to do it in my hand, and all I was lacking was the will to do it, because I was still scared to do it. But what my friend said to me that night a few weeks ago literally probably made my whole fucking year, my whole fucking life, of just knowing that somebody is proud of me for reaching this point. And I know so many other people are. I know that, but sometimes you just need to hear it. But the main point that I want anybody to take from this is that it's okay to not be okay, that it's okay to need help, and it's okay to talk to other people. It's okay to take medication. It's okay to go to a therapist. It's okay to talk to yourself in a mirror, write in a journal, whatever works for you. But it's okay, and you don't need to be embarrassed. You don't need to feel like a lesser version of yourself, because it's just simply not true. So, whatever hardships you've endured, going through right now, feelings of emptiness, loneliness, not being enough, trust me, I've been there, and so many other people have been there, but you can get through it. And the first step in doing that is always going to be the hardest, but just know it's not impossible. And on that note, I would just like to thank you all for tuning in, giving me a piece of your day, and I'm glad that you were able to stick with me through all of that. But until the next UP, guys, I'll see you when I see you. Take care.